a declassified CIA file from 1957. It's titled National Cultural Development Under Communism. It refers to Russia, the Jewish Bolshevik takeover of the Christian empire of Romanov Russia. This is what it's referring to. So this declassified 1957 CIA document, it mentions the Tatars of Transcaucasia and also the history of Tartaria. Now, many other researchers have brought this to the public's attention. Believe me, I'm by far not the first, and nor is it the focus of this video. This video is going to be mind-blowing because Tartaria does fit the historical narrative. And it is very interesting that the CIA had come across this information about what was really going on in Russia, this purge of history. The Jewish Bolsheviks were rewriting Russian history, and the CIA was documenting it. So this communist directive was to eliminate. This is a quote from the CIA document. It was to eliminate references to great Russian aggressions in the past, and the communists referred to here are the Jewish Bolsheviks, who enacted a purge of Russian history to sanitize references to the Tartarians and references to the Russian pogroms, which were specifically Russian Romanov practices of expelling Jews from Russia or quarantining them to specific areas away from the Russian people. So the question remains, why rewrite history to hide Tartaria? Well, I'm going to answer that for you guys. And our story begins with none other than Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan defeated the Tatars in 1202 at the Battle of Dalen Baljut. This battle was significant in Genghis Khan's rise to power, as the Tatars were one of the major rival tribes in the Mongolian steppe. In his campaign against the Jin dynasty of China, Genghis Khan unified the Turkic and Mongol clans of the Tatars, the Karaite, the Nayman, the Merkits, Uyghurs, Jurgens, Khitans, Kipchaks, and the Tanguts. The event that is often associated with the founding or consolidation of what would later be referred to as Tartaria, or the Great Tartary. In the early 13th century, it involved the rise of the Mongol Empire under Genghis Khan himself. In fact, the first date on record for the new people unified under Genghis Khan and known as Tartarians is in fact the Phoenix year of 1212 AD. This citation is from a 500-year-old book about Giraldus Mercator. The year 1212 AD was a phoenix year on the 138-year timeline of the weapon in the sky. Phoenix was the ancient symbol of resets, of the closing of an age and start of a new one, of the disappearance of populations and the sudden rise of new peoples. In 1212 AD, the sea along the coast of Holland rose up and drowned the land and pulled 306,000 people out to sea, drowned. Different colored rains fell upon France, and a halo appeared around the sun. Blood was said to have fallen from the sky. 3 crosses were seen in the sky over Falaise. A peculiar story relates to this year of 1212. A teenage boy in France named Stephen of Cloyes was visited by a celestial being, or so he believed, in the form of a voice that instructed him to collect together 50,000 children to leave their homes and families to embark on a holy war for God and take back the Holy Land from the evil Muslims. This began what is known as the Children's Crusade narrative. Word spread and children from all over Europe traveled toward Constantinople and southeast toward Jerusalem. Researcher John Keel wrote that the thousands and thousands of children involved vanished in masse. The Children's Crusade was a story concocted by the church and the present-day authorities of the time in 1212 because there was no earthly explanation for their disappearance. In the winter in Russia around Novgorod, early frost killed the harvest and children were sold as slaves for bread. Europeans began calling the eastern hordes Tartars after the prestigious Tatars, subdued by Genghis Khan, one of the largest of the Turkic tribes. And map makers began labeling the vast regions of Asia from where the hordes of Genghis Khan called home as Tartaria. The earliest European references to the Tartarians or Tartars date from the 13th century, during the time of the Mongol invasions of Eastern Europe. After the Mongols, often referred to as the Tartars, invaded Kiev and Russia in 1223, and then Hungary and Poland in the 1240s, Western European chroniclers began to write about the Tartarians. Matthew Paris, an English chronicler, wrote about the Mongol Tartar invasions in the 1240s and referred to them as Tartarii, depicting them as terrifying invaders from the east. The chronicles of Novgorod in Russia from the same period frequently mention the Tartars in the context of their destructive raids and conquests in Eastern Europe. Pope Innocent IV sent missions to the Mongols in the 1240s in an attempt to gather information about these invaders. The letters and reports returned by Giovanni della Piana del Carpine in 1245 and William Rubruck in 1253, who traveled to the Mongol Empire, include some of the earliest first-hand European descriptions of the Tartarians. Thus, while there is no single event called the founding of Tartaria, the Mongol unification under Genghis Khan in the early 1200s, particularly his campaigns and consolidations around the year 1212, was crucial in shaping the geopolitical landscape of Central Asia and beyond. So, we now begin 1212 AD, the first time Tartaria is entered into the historical record as a people at a geographical location. We now begin the annals of Tartaria. In the year 2 of Tartaria, 1214 AD, Genghis Khan led the Mongol horde to capture Peking, China. In the year 7 of Tartaria, 1219 AD, Genghis Khan learned that Mongol merchants had been robbed and disrespected in the Khwarezm Empire of Persia, where there was a dense population of Jews. Angered, the Mongol army traveled over 2,000 miles simply to retrieve the head of the Shah of Persia. Mongols raided villages and towns, destroyed castles, and killed all Islamic, Christian, and Jewish people they came across. Entire fields of livestock were slaughtered and retribution left rotting in the fields. Though severely outnumbered, the Mongols, through organized ferocity and military discipline, effectively killed 75% of all those living in the Khwarezm Empire. All Muslims, Zoroastrians, Christians, Jews, and Buddhists. The Shah fled 200 miles to the Caspian Sea shore and committed suicide when an elite force of Mongols caught up with him. Men that were determined to get his head. In the year 10 of Tartaria, 1222 AD, the Mongols invade India and a comet is seen in the sky. In the year 27 of Tartaria, 1239 AD, The rich Jewish Khazar kingdom, subservient to Russia, was overrun and destroyed by the Mongol horde of Batu Khan. This was present-day Ukraine and was a base of operations for international Jews networking in information, finances, and merchandise with Jews as far as Africa, Persia, the Mediterranean, and all of Europe. The hatred the Ashkenazi Jews had for the Tartarians would only grow as the centuries passed. In the year 28 of Tartaria, 1240 AD, the Mongols, utilizing gunpowder invented by the Chinese and exported by the Tartarians, made nearly all of Russia tributary to the Tartarians, further plundering Poland. The Tartarians are now using cannons and homemade bombs. In the year 29 of Tartaria, 1241 AD, the Mongol Tartars invaded Poland again and Hungary, and in the Battle of Legnica totally defeated the Europeans. Another force of Tartars were defeated by an army of Hungarians. In the year 42 of Tartaria, 1254 AD, Mongol chief Mango was targeted by the assassins, an old cult in Arabia. So the Mongols sieged all the assassin strongholds in the Muslim lands. The Mongols again invaded Persia and other Islamic regions in this year and did not discriminate between Muslims, Christians, and Jews in their marauding and slaughter. The Jewish holdings throughout Europe and the Middle East that were taken by the Mongols became a bone of contention between the Jews and the Tartarians. In the year 44 of Tartaria, the Mongols under Hulagu Khan crushed the assassins and burned their great library in the fortress of Alamut. In the year 46 of Tartaria, 1258 AD, Hulagu Khan led the Mongols into Babylonia and invaded Baghdad, destroying the city and butchering the inhabitants, ending Baghdad's reign as a scientific and cultural center in the Middle East. With a hatred for Islam, the Mongols even dismantled the ancient irrigation canal works that provided water to the fields, even far from the river. This is the reason that the area in Iraq is a desert today. This was done by the Tartarians. In the year 47 of Tartaria, 1259 AD, Kublai Khan ascends the Mongol throne over the most expansive geographical empire ever to have existed in recorded history, from China in the Far East to the Danube in the west of Europe, from Siberia north of Russia to the Persian Gulf. Known as the Tartars, they would terrorize Asia, Russia, the Middle East, and Europe, disrupting all of the international affairs, trade routes, economy, and information network of the Jews. In the year 48 of Tartaria, 1260 AD, the Mongols under Hulagu Khan sought to take Egypt on the way invaded Palestine, where the Mamluks of Egypt met them in battle and drove them off. One of the Mongol armies was completely destroyed by the Sultan of Egypt. This year begins the decline of the Mongol Empire, which divided into several smaller Mongol-controlled kingdoms rather than the unified empire of Tartaria. Mongols that settled in the east became Buddhist, while those that remained in the west became Muslims as they integrated with the locals. In this year, Kublai Khan becomes the Great Khan. So we have here that Tartaria was born, grew very, very fast and powerful, overspread the world as the largest empire in recorded history, all in 48 years before it fragmented into a bunch of Tartarian kingdoms. In the year 57 of Tartaria, 1269 AD, after journeying all the way to China and living in the court of Kublai Khan, the Mongol emperor Marco Polo returned to Venice, Italy, bringing back amazing stories of his adventures in Asia and news of the willingness of the Chinese to trade with European merchants. At this time, the entire affair is still a matter of privacy, a state secret. This is before Marco Polo was jailed. In the year 62 of Tartaria, 1274 AD, Kublai Khan has a large fleet constructed. A Mongol invasion force with Chinese auxiliaries tries to cross the sea to Japan, but is wiped out in an unexpected typhoon. In the year 68 of Tartaria, 1280 AD, the Yuan dynasty in China began a Mongol dynasty. It would endure 88 years to the year 1368. This would be a Tartarian occupation of China. In the year 69 of Tartaria, 1281 AD, Kublai Khan attempted to invade Japan by sea again with an even larger fleet and invasion force. Again, an unexpected typhoon wiped out the fleet, and the Mongols never again tried to attack Japan. Archaeologists have found among many of the sunken vessels of the Mongols primitive fragmentation bombs. In modern times, these are called grenades. In the year 82 of Tartaria, 1294 AD, Kublai Khan died, leaving no successor to the Mongol Empire, further weakening the federation of peoples loosely gathered under the name Tartaria. While the Tartarians stayed predominantly in the east of Asia and Mongolia, the Western Tartars in Egypt became known as the Golden Horde. In the year 102 of Tartaria, 1314 AD, the entire northern hemisphere beheld the great black darkness that was the Nemesis X object. Its final appearance before returning in 2046. Comets, strange mists, shadowy visitors in the city streets at night, and the great 3-year famine began in Europe all the way to the Baltic states. In this year, Europe became aware of a new weapon that would revolutionize all warfare for the next 7 centuries. The gun. It was invented by a German monk, according to the Chronicle of the City of Ghent. The gun now controlled the explosive power of gunpowder, which was hitherto used only as an explosive or in fragmentation grenades. The gun would introduce cannon and artillery warfare. In the year 103 of Tartaria, 1315 AD, the House of Osman or Uthman was founded, officially beginning the Ottoman Empire of the Turks. The name Ottoman is derived from Uthman's name in Turkish, Osman. His descendants ruled the empire for over 600 years, making the Ottoman Empire one of the longest lasting dynasties in history. He was the leader of a small Turkic principality called Beylik in the northwestern Anatolia around 1299. His dominion was initially minor, especially compared to the powerful Byzantine Empire to the west and the Seljuk Sultanate in the east. Uthman dreamt that a tree grew out of his navel, its branches spreading across the world, symbolizing the future vast expansion of his empire. This dream inspired his conquest and symbolized the divine blessing for the Ottoman Empire's rise. Uthman's raids and conquests were a part of a broader trend of Turkish expansion into Byzantine territory. He disrupted communications and trade in Eurasia, which was at this time tightly controlled by Jewish merchants and agents. His exploits gained him many warriors from other Turkic clans, eventually allowing him to fill in a power vacuum in Anatolia, Turkey, after the collapse of the Seljuk Sultanate of Rum. Uthman was the spear point of the emerging Ottoman Empire, built on warrior expansionism and loyalty to Islam, and would become one of the greatest empires in the world. This leads us to two startling revelations. First, we learned from a 500-year-old book that it was the Phoenix year of 1212 when the term Tartaria first entered the historical record as a description of a people. Phoenix years are all 138 years apart. And now, from this old book, we read that Ottoman was a Tartarian. This Tartarian ruler now built the Turkish Empire of Uthman in 1315 AD, which was precisely 138 years before fulfilling the dream of the Turks to take the Byzantine city of Constantinople in the month of May of the year 1453 AD, changing Constantinople to Istanbul. The Turks took the city using a gigantic cannon, and this siege is the first in history involving heavy artillery. So we return to the original question. Why did the Jewish Bolsheviks want to erase Russian history, erase references to Tartaria? Many Russians have Tatar ancestry, due to historical interactions between the Russian and Tatar populations over several centuries. The Tatars are a Turkic ethnic group, and their influence on Russian history dates back to the time of the Mongol Empire and its successor state, the Golden Horde, which controlled large parts of what is now Russia for about 250 years. What is being described here is a merging of the Tartarian and ancient culture of Rus, the Russians. The precursor to the Russian Empire, seated at Moscow, gradually expanded its power and influence. It incorporated many Tatar states, such as the Khanates of Kazan, Astrakhan, and the Crimea. Over time, intermarriage, trade, and political alliances between the Russians and the Tatars contributed to the mixing of the populations. Many Tatars also assimilated into Russian society, especially after the conquest of the Kazan Khanate in 1552 by Ivan the Terrible. This historical interaction left genetic and cultural traces in the Russian population, especially in areas like the Volga-Ural region where many Tatars lived. Further, the Jewish Khazarian Empire was wasted by the Tartarians, these same Tartars that have virtually mixed their history, their bloodlines, and their culture with the Russian and Hungarian people. The Russians have a long history of aggression against Jewish incursions and intrigues, and when the Bolshevik Revolution succeeded in taking over the Christian empire of the Russian Romanovs, the Jewish invaders did all they could to get the Russian people to forget their past. This is the true mystery of Tartaria. They emerged in 1212 AD on the 138-year Phoenix timeline, and one of their descendants, a Tartarian named Uthman, founded the Turkish Empire that was the greatest empire this world has ever seen. That would 138 years later take the great city of Constantinople and change its name to Istanbul.